Welcome to the Larry Kreider's Leadership Podcast. Larry is the author of over 40 books, the founder of Dove International, a worldwide family of churches and ministries in 6 continents, and has over 50 years of leadership experience. He and his guests will share inspirational leadership insights from their journey with God. These insights, gleaned from serving leaders in many nations, will transform your life and leadership. For more information on Larry's books and resources, visit LarryKreider.com.
Welcome to the Larry Kreider Leadership Podcast. Larry Kreider here. And with me back in the studio again today by popular demand. Great to have you here. Deryl Hurst, Senior Pastor at Westgate Church, and Wes Dudley, Executive Pastor at the same church, at Westgate Church. Welcome, guys. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We had you on before. You did such a good job. And I thought, we talked about how to develop leaders, and it was awesome. It's so good. But I really want to talk to the two of you today about how you've learned to work together, because you're two different personalities, and somehow you guys have worked together so well. So let's just talk about this. How do senior leaders work together with executive pastors? And this, of course, could be many different titles or whatever you use in your local church. But for you guys have done this so well. Deryl, we'll start with you. Talk about some things that you've learned. I know you were in this role in the past. Sure. You've learned about how to walk together with people that are different than us who are in leadership.
Yeah. So it's amazing how when we flow together in the Spirit, how tremendously diverse personalities can work together, and the unity, the bond of the Spirit is amazing. So when I served as executive pastor for Dwayne Britton for those 5 years before I became the senior pastor, I'm a very traditional Lancaster County farm boy. Dwayne Britton is an African-American man from inner city Cleveland, who lived in California for a while. I mean, you can't find two more diverse people than that. But we had the bond of peace in the Spirit. We worked together tremendously well, had great respect for one another, and it went really, really well. And so those sorts of things that the world would look at and say that could never work, in the kingdom, it can work. That's good. And it does work.
Exactly. Wes, give us your perspective.
Yeah, well, and something I know you've said before, Deryl, too, is even just your mission to kind of come on and just, be a Dwayne Britton expert and to serve him and to meet him where he's at, and how do you actually just, just seek to affirm him and encourage him and meet, make him successful. And so, even just modeling that, seeking to do that, I do think, again, that's part of a value that I see even within the body that, being part of Westgate. And, that's something that even growing up, my dad kind of had that similar perspective too. When he would go and work different jobs, it was like, how do I make my boss successful? It's not about me. And so, coming into this role as well, and and coming into just seeing the beauty of the body of Christ and the different gifts, the different perspectives we bring, but at the same time, how do you outserve the other? How do you actually just strive to make the other successful? How do we strive for this unity that Paul talks about so often as he challenges the body? And so I do think that there's a strong drive to flow in that vein when it comes to just what I see within Dove Westgate. But then I think there's a DNA that's there within our pastoral team that's been a precedent that's been set for many years. And so it's something that was very easy to flow into and actually begin to try to model it myself.
So talk to me about, you guys obviously have to see things differently sometimes. I mean, that's just normal for people in leadership. Every once in a while, right?
It happened once.
I'm sure. Once, many times over. So talk about how you handle that, like both of you. If you're seeing things differently, how do you walk through that to come to a place of agreement to move ahead? What's that look like?
Well, a couple things that are real critical in that. Number one is that I as the senior leader, I create an atmosphere where Wes feels safe to share how he's feeling, what's on his mind, how he sees things as we discuss things privately, one-on-one. And so it's up to me, really, whether he feels like he can really say how he feels, what he really thinks, and be totally frank and honest and transparent with me. But then when we go out from that time, we're in lockstep, we're in unity, we're going out with the same message. Even if at the end of the day, Wes and I don't see it exactly eye to eye. Nevertheless, we can go out of that time together of having discussed that and agreeing, here's how we're going to handle it. And there's never any element of, well, this is what Deryl said. I don't really agree with it, but this is what we have to do. Obviously, you can't have that, and obviously Wes doesn't do that. And so we portray unity, which it truly is unity, even if there's not unanimity of opinion in every situation.
Right. Wes, your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that just the whole idea that we just see throughout Scripture, just the whole concept of honor is so important. And what does that look like? And we have so many opportunities to practice that, just no matter if you're in professional ministry or not.
Right.
But it is amazing, I think, and I know Deryl would agree with this, but because we challenged many of our employees, different people we hire, is like, really be really careful as you're getting hired and coming into this role, what you're entering into, in the sense that it can be easy. Oh, I'm going to work for the church, and I'm doing God's work, and I would obviously push back against that mindset, but. What is really important to recognize is that, there's a lot of other things that are going on, and there's going to be some disagreements. There's going to be some tension. There's going to be some things that'll be going on behind the scenes that'll look businessy. There's going to be different models, different approaches, and you've got to still it's not going to be all just flowers and roses and just amazing whatever, just because I'm working for the church.
Right.
But realizing that you've still got to make sure that you're walking in this place of honor, and it's got to be it's a mindset. It is a consistent choice, and I that's something that I've had to continue to learn. And Deryl would tell you too. I mean, when I first came on staff too, I know we went toe to toe quite a few times. Not so much because of him, but because I was just being younger and very vocal, and I'm still somewhat. My opinions can come out of me, but I think I've tried to learn to be a little more gracious in how I phrase it. Try to be a little more honoring in how I express it. But there were some tense times. So some of these things, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't just like, oh, okay, flip the honor switch. No, this is something that we've had to learn. But to be able to honor the authority that Deryl carries as the senior leader of the church. The elder team at times too, maybe not always agreeing with certain things that they're wanting to do big picture wise, but coming under that and saying, man, what's good for the kingdom is good enough for me. I can submit to this. We can walk together, even if I don't always agree with it, see it eye to eye, see it from the exact same angle, and I can still carry this out and encourage and impart development and leadership and different things to our staff, even if, again, I wouldn't come at the exact same conclusion, because there's this desire just to honor each other.
Right.
I know sometimes, we're not getting into all the weeds, and I know that's why sometimes you do see some churches maybe fracture, because there are going to be irreconcilable differences. But again, I think a lot of that, the reason why we don't see that as much is because just the values, the DNA of just the Dove family in general. And so just this real culture of honor is very prevalent there.
Yeah. I think the two of you have also learned to walk in fields of ministry in a powerful way. And in 2 Corinthians 10, Paul, in verse 13, I think to 17, Paul talks about God has assigned fields to us. And like in the Devil Westgate Church, obviously the buck does stop, of course, with the elders, but it stops with the senior leader of the church. They're responsible for that field of ministry. We're all working together within that field. And departments in the church that you would be responsible for, Wes, there's a sense of responsibility before the Lord that you have in that field of ministry. And I think that also helps, in the whole process. Now, you mentioned you come from different, you're a Lancaster County farm boy. You mentioned, Deryl, and you come from Michigan. You guys really come from different backgrounds. What about personality? How are you guys different in personality?
Well, yeah, we are different. We are both strong-willed people.
Right.
We really are.
Right.
And I do want to actually back up just a second on the whole fields of ministry thing, because it relates to this subject. There are areas of responsibility, actually ever increasing areas of responsibility that I've turned over to Wes to oversee, and that continues actually to increase as time goes by, as more and more trust is developed, and his competencies grow, and so there's more and more, and there's times there's decisions made that I might look at something and say, well, that isn't the way I would have done it.
Right.
But it's an area that I've given to him as his area of responsibility.
His field of ministry.
Exactly. I'm not going to micromanage that.
Right.
And there's numerous examples of that in the church where there's areas that have been turned over to someone.
Right.
And I'll see that thing and I'm like, well, I probably would do that a little differently, but I stay out of that. I mean, if it has to rise to a significant level before I'm going to insert myself in the process and try to make some correction of course or something. I will not micromanage. I try very, very hard not to do that. And I do believe that I'm successful at that. So not micromanaging is huge. I can just tell you this. If Wes was micromanaged, he would no longer be working for Dub Westgate Church. He would not tolerate that. And when you have good people, they won't tolerate that. And so if you want good, competent people, you need to release them to do what they do well, even if you may or may not agree 100% with everything that they do. So that's really, really significant. And the important part of how the different personalities work together is let him be who he is in his situation and just release him in that way.
So good.
So that's really important. The other aspect about that is, as far as it relates to personality, is really I've tried over the years to just realize and talk to myself about the fact that different personalities on the team are a blessing. I see things a certain way. Someone else sees things a certain way. For me, when I look at a situation, I always see the opportunity. We should do this. We could do that. We could, and then there'll be people on the team that say, yeah, but we're going to have to cover this detail and that detail and that detail, which I may or may not have taken into account. And so just to see the different perspectives come out is always healthy, even though it may not reflect how I might see it.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you shared with the whole field of ministry thing. Obviously, farms have lots of fields, and there might be different people responsible for each field on the farm. And of course, in leadership, we have a sense of responsibility that's larger responsibility. There are other fields within that, but we need to honor what God's doing through the leaders in that field. So I really appreciate that. Wes, anything else on this?
Yeah, well, even just thinking, so we toss around the word leadership a lot, and even just responsibilities that you carry and how to actually lead a certain way. And the one thing I think that sometimes like a negative byproduct of that sometimes is that we feel like, okay, well, it has to look just like this in order to be an effective leader, and realizing like, well, at the same time, you better make sure you know what your gifts are.
Right. And
that is the one thing, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit already, but I believe we're both very secure in who we are. We recognize I do not have the same gifts. It doesn't mean I can't grow in some of these areas.
Right.
But my motivation, 9 times out of 10 is going to be more of a mercy motivation. And so, but at the same time, I better be able to learn from my mistakes, even coming from that motivation. For example, too, there's going to be times when we're trying to develop certain people or trying to call different people. Who belongs on the bus and what seat did they get? Daryl is very he tends to be a lot more organizationally minded and probably more practically minded than I am in that regard. And so he does a good job of I say identifying just the right people for the proverbial bus. Whereas sometimes out of my own mercy motivation, I'm pretty much like, oh man, they're going to be perfect. How do we get them on the bus? And then, maybe 6 months go by, or maybe even a couple months go by, and I'm coming to Daryl, I'm like, oh man, okay, is there like a way we can kick them off the bus? Because they never should have been on there in the first place. And so learning from those mistakes, though, is so critical. So of course, we've got this desire to be confident in who we are, making sure we're not being someone that we're not. But at the same time, when we do mess up and we see like this other perspective, as Daryl's leading from his place, his motivational giftings, okay, man, that's a great point. How do I actually begin to carry into that and apply that to my own executive pastor role as well, and vice versa? I've been able to push on him with some of the mercy side of things too. So it goes both ways.
Larry, there's something really important I want to address, I think, as it relates to this issue. And that is the matter of humility.
Yeah, that's good.
I recall several times over the years where I mishandled or mismanaged something. And Wes, first of all, I applaud him for having the courage and the boldness to come into my office and say, dude, you did not handle that well. And he's done that. And I can tell you, as a senior leader, everything in your flesh wants to say, I'm in charge here. buzz off, but I've had, by God's grace, the ability to hear what he says. And I've been able to go back and repent of and undo a couple of things where I mismanaged and mishandled things. And so I feel like that's really critical. And I can just tell you that is hard to do as a senior leader, especially if you're an insecure leader. You will not be able to handle that.
Right. Very, very good. Something I've seen both of you do well over the years, and I want to start with you, Deryl, and let you respond first, is believe in people and come up with a personal development plan to see them succeed. And we'll start with you, Deryl. How do you do that? And then, Wes, I'd like to hear from you. How have you and are you doing that also?
Yeah, Larry, thanks for asking that question. That's really important. In a previous podcast, we talked about identifying people of character, giving them opportunity, raising them up, and those things are all so important. But equally important is developing these people. How do we develop them? What do we do to help them grow? There's many ways to do that. First of all, modeling, leading by example. I think that's probably the most critical and least quantifiable one would be just how we model leadership. But beyond that, to have a practical personal development plan for them. One of the things that I like to do, I've learned a few things over the years, or I've read a few things that I think have been very helpful. And I've taken leaders through several books, one of which is Axiom. Was written years ago by Bill Hybels, who I know has fallen from grace. Nevertheless, the book Axiom is a really good leadership book. And what I'll do is I'll have whoever I'm kind of mentoring, we'll read ahead 5, 6, 8 chapters, and then we'll just kind of walk through them, and I'll talk about how that axiom, that principle has played out in my life. And we'll talk about their thoughts about it. And that's been really good. Another book, one of my favorite books ever written, Larry, is your book, The 21 Tests of Leadership. I use that book in a similar way. Obviously, Maxwell has written a couple of really good books, Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. You can do the same thing with them. You walk through those books chapter by chapter, discussing them. I'll go read ahead. I'll highlight certain lines, say, the author says this. What does that mean to you? How does that play out in your life? And also I'll ask questions about those specific chapters. So just to help them walk through these various leadership principles, and really, I think it's really important to be intentional about that.
Good. Wes, how about you?
Yeah. So even just thinking through from a staffing standpoint, I know that, so Deryl has, his areas oversight. He's passed, the baton in certain areas that I help oversee some other things. And so one of the things I've enjoyed doing over the last couple of years is just trying to think through, okay, how can we just better just see our own staff develop? So those that are, employed by Westgate, those that have this full-time and part-time roles, and to be able just to come alongside them. And so some of the things that Deryl's model, the things that he's done, I totally agree with, doing book studies together and just trying to actually have some good, just some one-on-ones just to talk some things through to grow. But also what I've tried to develop over the last couple of years is to really have a bit of a year-end review, just with our crew, and just say, okay, man, when you look back over this last year, what were some of your biggest hurdles? Is there anything that you're doing when it comes to your job, or just life as we're connected to it, that you shouldn't be doing, the things that you should be that you're not, and how do we partner with you in that? And then to think through, okay, what are we shooting for this next year? And then at the same time too, how can we partner with you to see these goals, or to see these areas of development just grow stronger in your life? And so that to me has been something I've enjoyed working on. It's something I've enjoyed. And now I think we've got a pretty good system in place where it's been happening now for the last few years. And I enjoy following up with our team. And so it's almost like, I feel like in my role now too. So yes, I am functioning in pastoral ministry, and I do see myself as a shepherd within this church. But the thing that I really enjoy about my job now is helping to pastor our pastors, or to help shepherd our staff, and being in an executive pastor role that gives me some opportunities to actually help develop a different side of things when it comes to just professional ministry.
I do want to say, for our listeners' sake, I think the average church in the United States is like 75 people, and they do not have paid staff, or maybe have a part-time senior pastor, or maybe he's working another job or whatever. But these principles that the two of you are discussing apply there also. So whether someone's paid on staff or not,
that's a good point.
These basic truths and principles do apply also in that kind of a setting.
So true.
Here's your last chance. We're almost out of time. Anything else, Deryl or Wes, you'd like to share?
Well, you're talking about how we work together in our roles. One of the things that I feel like has been life-giving to Wes, and he alluded to it just a minute ago, and that is the fact that he has slowly transitioned from kind of just pastoring people individually, maybe, to pastoring leaders.
Right.
And so as he continues to grow in that role and having the ability to increase in that role, I feel like I've seen that be really life-giving to him. So one of the things I want to try to do always is, anybody on staff, I'm looking at how can we broaden their horizons? How can we increase their capacity? How can we give them more opportunities so that they don't ever feel like they're stuck? And the truth is, there's certain positions that it's kind of hard to do that with, but we do our best to try to give people the opportunity. How can I grow? How can I increase? And so Wes is doing that with people he oversees, and so certainly I desire to do that as well in with Wes and with others who I oversee. Just allow people, help people to grow, even be part of the process of lifting them up and lifting their lid. That's the word I was looking to kind of lift their lid, let them expand their capacity.
Yeah, and as we do that as leaders, obviously we think, what are we going to do in the future? Well, God always has new things for us to be involved in. Like, I know for you, Deryl, you serve in the WSA Apostolic Council, helping oversee churches throughout the nation, and also in the Latin American Council, helping oversee churches in Brazil and parts of Latin America. And so as we release others, there's always something more than God has for us. But often we will get into that role until we realize that we need to release others first.
Yeah, it's insecure leaders that fear elevating others and raising others up and seeing them increase. Insecure leaders worry that, well, they'll take over my job, or I won't be needed anymore. I've heard the saying already that says that the saying would be, people who work themselves out of a job will never be lacking in something to do.
Right.
As you work yourself out of a job, so to speak, there'll be plenty for you to do. There'll be plenty of people who want to have you, working in their company or their firm, their church, their ministry, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Wes, any last minute words of wisdom? Yeah,
well, I just appreciate what you said too, because earlier, as far as just recognizing that, man, this stuff can be applied no matter what type of local body you're connected to. And so it is, we know that within the Dove family, there's so many different expressions and what it looks like. And so, I get that, and I am blessed to be paid to do some of these things that I'm passionate about. However, I still, at the same time, I've got to make sure I'm finding time to, see this stuff, play out, even in times that I'd say that I'm not being paid. And so for the casual pastor out there that's just like maybe even riding solo, like, man, there's still opportunities. And one example I'd even give is even just last night, I was doing a bathroom project, invited a young adult leader that's a new father, hasn't been very, very long. Someone that I've seen is just like, I see leadership qualities there. So he came over and helped me do my bathroom. So while we're working on my house, I'm asking him questions, speaking in his life, spending some time together. And so, I'm not getting paid for that. That's something that but I see it. I'm trying to call him up, bring him into my own sphere of just life in general. And so no matter where we're at, we can do this stuff. You may not be able to hire an executive pastor, but man, who are the leaders who are going to come alongside of you? So you can actually see just the kingdom grow stronger and your local expression just be vibrant as you, call leaders higher and walk with them.
Well, Deryl Hurst, Senior Pastor of Dove Westgate Church, and Wes Dudley, Executive Pastor of Dove Westgate Church, thank you for being on the Leadership Podcast. And for all those who are listening today, check out the show notes. You can learn more about these guys. If you need to tap them on the shoulder sometime for some wisdom, there's a way that you could do that. And also, check out the school or leadership school and many other things on there. You will see some of the books we mentioned and things like that. So glad you've joined us today for Larry Kreider Leadership Podcast. Looking forward to being back with you again in the near future. God bless you. From 170 plus nations in the world over the last couple of years have connected with this podcast. And we're so blessed to be able to, I'm so blessed to be able to connect with leaders that I've seen who are the real deal, like the two of you, and have you share things that you've learned that help the body of Christ and leaders worldwide. So thank you. God bless you all. And we'll see you again in a few weeks.
Thank you for listening to Larry Kreider's Leadership Podcast. If you want more information about any of Larry's books, daily devotionals, small group resources, or any other teachings, go to larrykreider.com.